Gentlemen, great to see you. Today we have another really special guest, Martin Ritchie, who is from GPT Group, and really such a pleasure to have him on. So I'll let you do the intro and give us a bit of his background.
Martin Ritchie is a fund manager at GWOF. GWOF stands for GPT Wholesale Office Fund. They have 17 office buildings on the eastern seaboard of Australia. The majors include Darling Park, 100 Queen Street, 750 Collins Street, 8 Exhibition Street, 530 Collins Street, and the rest. Martin is definitely one of a kind, a bit eccentric and different on how he manages people and real estate and funds. But based on his performance and his reputation, he is very successful at how he does things, even though it's a little bit left to center. Martin is very big on sustainability, very big on bringing people up through the ranks within GPT and other companies as well, and has been a great mentor to many people I know in the industry, including myself. He's always very generous with his time and his advice, and it's a great privilege for me personally to be able to interview Martin today and hear about how, the $8.9 billion GWOF fund has performed in 2020, what they learned from this year, and how that's changed their planning for the new year.
Martin, thanks for coming on to the show. It's such a pleasure to see you. We're going to start with a COVID-related question. So 2020 has been a very, very tough year. So what has been your main learning from the year, and how is it changing how you're heading into 2021?
Great question, Nerida, and hello, and hi, Zelman. This has been a great reminder that change is sudden. We think of change as gradual. We do a lot of forecasting, and all our forecasts tend to be gradual, but change is not. Change is a sudden phenomena. And we also are learning that we're not very good at predicting stuff. We're not very good at predicting peaks. We're not very good at predicting troughs. I think pretty much all we can really predict is direction at any point in time. So I think that's the big learning for this year, is really a reminder that change just comes upon us. And I guess what it also reminds us is how we are very resilient and we're very adaptable. And what we've seen is a whole lot of new creativity and ideas coming about, much like your show that we're talking to now. Which is new and interesting. And I think that's the great lesson from 2020 is, okay, what can we do differently? What are the new ideas? Let's give them a go. And they're not things that are heavily produced or thought through, but they are things where you just get up and do it, just like you are. So that's probably the pickup for 2020. Have a go.
Thank you for the positive comments. This is not a question, Martin, but you and I have been talking for many years regularly, and about 2018, I think it was, or early 2019, you spoke about some major disruptions coming to the market based around sustainability and things like that. And I didn't really understand what you're saying, and I don't think you called it COVID at the time, but you basically, if you remember the conversation, described what happened this year. You described it about a year and a half ago to me. And it was just an interesting phenomenal. You just said the way things are going and the way people are just building and building and building and not giving back, something is going to break. And in your own words, that's kind of what's happened here, which is interesting.
You recognize that there are these trends. So we talked about trends, didn't we? We talked about densification trends. We talked about investor demand trends for buildings. We talked about sustainability. We talked about tenants wanting flexibility. We talked about service that tenants want out of their office, landlords. And we talked about, what sort of buildings do people want in the future? And we sort of felt that more distinctive buildings would be more attractive. So I think COVID has COVID hasn't created trends. Those trends were there. They might not have been very noticeable, but COVID's put those trends really on the fast track. And now everyone's thinking far more deeply around, I want far more flexibility out of my office space if I'm a tenant. I want higher levels of service. Sustainability is my number 1 or 2 or 3 issue. So we talked about them as little things. Now they've been amplified into really big considerations for 2020 and beyond.
Yeah, often this year I found myself thinking back to our conversation, how we're almost talking about the future without realizing it.
It was a very stimulating conversation,
It was.
Solomon. You have lots of ideas to share, and it was great.
Martin, on to the outlook. I mean, you mentioned before that, we kind of know where the direction is going at the moment. And I guess with office vacancy, the vacancy rate is trending upwards. What's your outlook now for new office construction over the next 5 years? I mean, do you have a view as to how much will be reduced, or any ideas as to what's going to happen there?
As I said, it's really hard to predict, isn't it, this sort of stuff? But I suppose the overarching statement is there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty, and everyone's feeling this uncertainty. And in that uncertainty, there's definitely going to be more space available in a couple of years than there is now. And that's not the least because tenants aren't growing because of the recession, but maybe it's bigger than that. It's that they don't even know how much space they would require on a normal basis. So there's no benchmark anymore. There's no line in the sand from which they go up and down because the line itself has moved. So looking forwards, I would expect there will be a reduction in proposed development, and only those developments that get pre-commitments of a sufficiently high level will actually proceed. So then the question turns to, well, what are the kind of buildings that will proceed? And I imagine there'll be buildings that offer higher levels of service, higher levels of amenity, higher levels of distinctiveness, something that people can really affiliate their brand with, because I think that's the thing that's changing for us in office buildings nowadays. Is we don't want a bland building that says nothing. We want the building to say something about us and say something about our business, and that's incredibly subtle. So I'm hoping it leads to a high level of investment in really good design and really good aesthetic offerings.
Martin, where do you predict vacancies and workplace ratios to be sitting this time next year?
Yeah, without putting figures on things, Zelman, that's a really difficult one. But very generally, I imagine it'll be higher levels of vacancy than
and
today.
Workplace ratios?
And ratios will probably expand. But I think we should qualify that a little bit in that the average workplace density, and Nerida probably has more accurate data on this, it's probably in the 12 to 14 square meters per person across an average of office space utilization across the whole market. The pursuit of 8 square meters per person or 6 square meters per person is the bit that's going to be dead, I imagine. So maybe the average actually won't change very much, but we won't be fighting hard to get those densities down. So maybe we'll still be sitting around 12 to 14 so that we can create the social distancing and the other health requirements that we need to. So I suppose, density ratio is not very different, but we will not be fighting for the really dense fit outs anymore.
On to sustainability, it is a huge focus for the GPT group. What changes have you made around sustainability for next year? Has there been a change as a result of the pandemic, or is it pretty much business as usual?
Yeah, Nerida, the pandemic hasn't changed the pursuit of sustainability. GPT's target is now 2024 for the whole group, and my fund achieved it this year. So we've been totally carbon neutral for the 12 months to the end of September 2020. And we hope to have all that completely verified by Christmas. And that will make us the first large fund globally to achieve carbon neutral status.
Very
so that hasn't, thank you, but that hasn't changed. And the focus on sustainability remains. I think that if you talk to the sustainability team, it's been a really tough year because all the agencies that work with you and help you with your ratings suddenly found they couldn't perform their duties if they couldn't go out and do the various inspections. So they had to really pull a rabbit out of a hat to actually get these buildings verified. So yeah, no change. But hopefully, the outcome of the pandemic is that sustainability is an even greater focus for everybody.
As a major CBD landlord across the country, are you looking at amenities like car parks, breakout rooms, end-of-trip facilities, or even toilets differently coming into 2021?
There are thoughts going on about amenity generally. So if amenity is going to become higher in demand and more important, and the quality of amenity is greater, we're going to have to address that. I think the only thing that we've really done differently in the last 12 months, and this actually happened pre-COVID by chance, was that Queen and Collins will have non-gender specific bathrooms, for instance. It'll have individual bathroom suites on the floor for people to use. So that'll be a bit of a first. I expect that'll be something that we might see more of in time. But the whole point about the race for better and better end of trips was already going on. So building owners keep outdoing each other with their offering in end of trip. I don't see that abating. Kitchens are something that I don't think we've really offered in a common area before. And that might be if that's what you're suggesting, Zelman, that might be a really interesting idea to explore, but we haven't looked at that sort of thing yet. And the whole breakout space or the whole lobby space, I suppose, take 2 South Bank Boulevard, which we did about 3 years ago, was one of the first lobbies to really embrace that third space breakout area. It was very, very successful. I think everyone's racing to offer that kind of amenity in buildings because our tenants love that.
Yeah, well, you and I have met there on more than one occasion.
Yes, yeah, indeed.
And as far as retail goes, what role will retail play in major office buildings? And if you can handpick a retail mix or amenity or use, what would that look like and what purpose would it be there to fill?
Yeah, I guess I think about the retail amenity as being just that. It's an amenity offering. It's an ambience creator. It's an experience offering, and it's convenience offering for the people that work in the building or visit the building. So it's not so much about generating investment value from the rent that your retailer provides. It's about picking the retailer that really has something different about his offering or about his service or about the look, someone that we can help and work with to generate the kind of ambience that we want to see in the building. And look, Zelman, we've talked a lot to you about doing that in our buildings and trying to pick the right operators that really have that bit of pizzazz that can be different and be special. Because people don't usually talk so much about the office building, do they? They say, I want to meet you at Cafe Nero or whichever cafe it might be. So the brand name and who they are really does matter in the sense of placemaking.
One of the popular questions on Lead the Way is advice for young people. So obviously, going through a pandemic when you're early stage of your career, working from home, it can be quite challenging. So what's your advice to young people going through a recession early stage in their careers?
Yeah, what a wonderful opportunity. Is my answer. The learning in a recession is where the real learning, I think, happens, or your accelerated learning. So I think for young people, the first and probably the most important thing is you've got to do something you love. Because if you love it, you'll want to do more of it and you'll get really good at it and you'll be successful. So I think start point is do what you love. Second one is once you're doing what you love, do your absolute best, because that's what gets noticed. Get a mentor, or find someone to work for who is going to focus on your own growth, not just on the output they can get out of you. Speak up, I guess. Your ideas are valuable. I mean, that no one has a monopoly on good ideas. They can come from anywhere. So don't be afraid to speak up and share your ideas. And recognize that almost all your learning is on the job. I don't remember the exact percentages. Is it like 70% on the job 20% is watching someone else, and 10% is doing courses or something. Are they the ratios? You might know better than myself, Nerida, but
Sounds right.
On the job is really what matters. And so the only way you learn on the job is if you are spending the time with people that really know their stuff that you can learn from.
And Martin, which companies or individuals have stood out for you in 2020?
That was, feeling all locked up and closeted. It feels like I haven't seen anyone else for much of the year. I think, so I'm probably going to end up talking about people that I'm working more closely with, and perhaps people outside of our own organization. But I felt that what the team in GPT, the development team on Queen and Collins, have done under excruciating circumstances has been fantastic. The degree of, I think just the bringing in of the wider team of consultants and specialists to create something very new and different, and to deal with some tremendous challenges which existed without COVID. When you're working on a historic building, you're always finding new problems, for instance. They've done a super job of keeping it together and continually making that product and that outcome better than we thought it was going to be.
Final question, Martin, around opportunity. So what do you think is the biggest opportunity that's come out of the crisis?
Yeah, I probably touched on it earlier, but the opportunity to think differently and try new things, try out new creative ideas and solutions, follow a new path. One of the things I've taught when I'm talking to other people that work in other industries, particularly in the tech side of things, they've all been working away like crazy on new ideas, because they're seeing COVID as shaking up our society and creating new opportunities. And they're trying to think, what can they offer to us as customers in those new opportunities? And I think for us, we should be thinking the same. Think about, what does this mean? Let's try something new. So yeah, the new opportunities and the opportunity to be creative and to speak up.
Last final question, if I may, but during 2020, and I know it's hard to remember it now when we all had a bit more time on our hands, any TV series that you've managed to binge watch, or books you've read that stuck out for you that you'd want to recommend to anyone watching this?
Yeah, hey, my sons and I, we rewatched Game of Thrones, the whole 8 series.
Wow.
And I think I've only watched about half of it, 5 or 6 years ago. Watching it all in one go was really good. And I learned a lot about human nature at its most basic level, and human behavior. And if you think about it, you can apply it in your day-to-day life, and you can walk around seeing the same characters. So you watch out. Huh? That for us was really compelling.
That's a very creative TV series to watch from the beginning.
Yeah,
I think it's very complicated.
Yeah, well, my sons and I watched it again, and we said, we think that's the best series we've ever watched. And we wish we could forget it so we could watch it all again fresh. That was very good.
Well, Martin, we just, on behalf of Nerida and I, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule to come talk to us and share with us what you're seeing from your role and your responsibilities, and how you've managed to get through this year, and what parts of this year you're taking into 21. But Martin, you're one of a kind in the real estate industry, someone who I personally look up to and gives me a lot of advice and opportunities of my career. And this is a fantastic privilege for me personally to get you on to lead the way and get your insights, because it's super valuable. So thank you.
It's very generous of you. Thank you, Zelman. Yeah, and thank you, Nerida, for making the time. It was a fun chat.
Yeah, thanks for coming
great
on.
questions.